Part 1, the FBI, right think, wrong think, or plain old groupthink. Hello, this is Hnatio reporting for the Objective News Network. Welcome to Part 1 of the FBI, right think, wrong think, or plain old groupthink. Today we are going to spend a few minutes talking about the early history of the FBI, the growing power and reach of the agency since 9/11, the virtuosity of senior FBI leadership, and the growing reports of misconduct by rank and file agents. In Part 2, we will explore the public's trust in the FBI, the neutrality of the agency in applying the law fairly in the absence of political influence, and worrisome changes in the conduct of the FBI, along with the new powers that are being granted to the agency, making it easier for the agency to conduct what are called suspicionless investigations of Americans. Like many institutions of our federal government, the FBI has taken a lot of hard knocks over the past few years, but lately things seem to be getting worse. The question we are going to ask today is whether the growing public distrust of the FBI is justified or not. At ONN, we use a powerful and advanced research tool called authentication to help us navigate the vast seas of data on the internet to find credible sources of information that we use to look at all sides of a story. Our goal at ONN is to provide you with truthful and objective analysis of the news of the day. So let's start off by asking authentication. What is the history of the FBI? Here we are immediately taken to a data set that provides a brief history of the agency, telling us that the chain of events leading to the creation of the FBI was set in motion way back in 1906, when President Teddy Roosevelt appointed his second Attorney General, Charles J. Bonaparte, and I quote from the article, "After becoming the nation's top lawman, Bonaparte learned that his hands were largely tied in tackling the rising tide of crime and corruption," close quote. The article goes on to say, and I again quote, "During its first 15 years, the Bureau was a shadow of its future self. It was not yet strong enough to withstand the sometimes corrupting influence of patronage politics on hiring, promotions, and transfers. New agents received limited training and were sometimes undisciplined and poorly managed." Nonetheless, we are told that the organization grew in power and influence under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover to become a powerful crime-fighting organization. Okay, next let's ask authentication. What is the purpose of the FBI? Here we are immediately taken to this FBI data set, telling us that the FBI is responsible for investigating domestic and international terrorism, foreign counterintelligence, cybercrime, public corruption, civil rights, organized crime and drug crime, white-collar crime, violent crimes, and other matters under its broad mission to, quote, "protect the American people and uphold the Constitution of the United States," close quote. The investigative scope and discretion of the FBI as an integral part of our system of justice makes it among the most powerful of all institutions in our society. The FBI has the reach to touch the life of every American for good or ill. This power is only magnified by the agency's discretion to decide whether to investigate, who to investigate, what to investigate, how to investigate, and when to investigate any one of us. And it's even more scary when the FBI has the ability to classify its own activities, including its own potential wrongdoing. Of course, at the very heart of today's growing distrust of our institutions of government, including the FBI, are growing questions about the virtuosity of leadership at both the Department of Justice and the FBI, and the growing number of FBI special agents who have been caught violating the agency's own mission to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution. Some critics go so far as to allege that the leadership of the FBI no longer works for the people and couldn't give a hoot about the Constitution. These observers contend that the leaders of the Department of Justice and the FBI have become politically weaponized foot soldiers who are simply using the law to impose the political will of the few on the American people. So let's go back to authentication and type in history of corruption at the FBI. Here we are immediately taken to a data set at Wikipedia that provides a list of controversies involving the Federal Bureau of Investigation, including unlawful surveillance activities of U.S. citizens, covert political operations, unlawful overseas operations, the Waco and Ruby Ridge incidents, internal FBI obstruction of Chinese political contributions, the Whitey Bulger and Robert Hansen cases, the 2013 death of Abaraji Dodashev, one of the Boston Marathon bombers, at the hands of the FBI during an interrogation, the politically motivated mishandling of the Hillary Clinton email scandal, the Inspector General of the Department of Justice Horowitz's report on internal FBI wrongdoing involving Russiagate, politically motivated and fraudulently supported FISA warrants, and the list goes on and on and on. But the problems at the FBI do not appear to end with questions about the virtuosity of the FBI's leadership, but extends to many corrupted rank and file agents too. When we type in corrupted special agents of the FBI, we are taken to numerous data sets regarding the corruption of individual agents. Here, a Department of Justice press release tells us that a former FBI special agent was found guilty of conspiring to accept at least $150,000 in cash bribes and other items of value in exchange for providing sensitive law enforcement information to a corrupt lawyer with ties to Armenian organized crime. In another case, we are directed to a dataset telling us about another former FBI special agent who erased the contents of his government computer hard drive, knowing that a court had ordered the computer to be submitted for forensic examination. The FBI agent admitted that he had obtained evidentiary recordings that he placed on his computer hard drive, and that he wiped the computer clean after questions arose about when and in what manner he had obtained the recordings. At this data set appearing in the Los Angeles Times, we're told about a former FBI agent involved with an identity theft ring who was found guilty of bribery and money laundering. Or how about this data set at the New York Post telling us about the arrest of an FBI agent who brutally beat his wife, another agent involved in sexually harassing a subordinate, a top FBI official who was accused of having a fling with an underling, then participating in a personnel decision involving her lover. Or how about this data set at News of Canada entitled Whistleblowers Describe Corruption Culture at FBI Field Offices, Completely Out of Control. The article describes the initiation of terrorism investigations by FBI agents against innocent people to boost the agents' performance ratings. The internet is replete with other credible reports of the corruption of individual agents at the FBI. The next data set we come to is a report by the Inspector General of the Justice Department about the congressional testimony and subsequent appearance on 60 Minutes of a senior FBI official who criticized the agency's failure to hold those responsible for misconduct properly accountable, and spoke to a dual system of discipline, saying, in those rare instances when employees are disciplined, it's usually low-level employees. The FBI official later alleged that he was referred for investigation by his boss to the Inspector General of the Justice Department and overlooked for future promotions in retaliation for telling the truth. The Inspector General report is very significant because it shows that objectivity in large government organizations can be quickly lost under the threat of exposure. The tone of the Inspector General report serves as a salient reminder that the Inspector General of the Justice Department works for his political appointed boss, the Attorney General, who rates his performance. Thus, making your agency head look as good as possible in tough situations is the political name of the game for those inspector generals in Washington who prefer to keep their jobs. Now, let's take a look at the other side of the spectrum. The FBI employs approximately 35,000 people. Of this number, approximately 7,800 are special agents with the power to investigate, or not, as the case may be, crimes, especially those crimes that would expose wrongdoing by the agency itself. So the real question becomes, do the misjudgments and corrupt actions of a few senior leaders and special agents in such a large agency mean that the entire organization is corrupt and not to be trusted? In this sense, the damning report by Department of Justice Inspector General Horowitz regarding the dealings at the FBI that gave rise to the Russiagate scandal and the subsequent firings of Director Comey, Andrew McCabe, and Peter Strzok may serve to send a powerful signal that things are not quite right at the FBI. Even worse, the same people who took and then violated their solemn oaths to protect and defend the Constitution have not been held accountable under the law for their actions. That brings us to the conclusion of part 1 of our series, the FBI, right think, wrong think, or just plain groupthink. Next time, in part 2, we'll talk about the public's trust in the FBI, the agency's neutrality in applying the law fairly in the absence of political influence, changes in the conduct of the FBI, and the new powers that are being granted, making it even easier to conduct suspicionless investigations of any American citizen. It is what it is for October 21st, 2022. This is John Hnatio reporting for the Objective News Network. We look forward to seeing you for part 2 of our series.